Nusrat. Welcome to the Transformer Series Season 2. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and absolutely delighted to be part of this series, and I hope to engage in absolutely delightful conversation with you.
Great. So Nusrat, HDFC Bank is actually one of the largest spenders, CSR spenders in the country, and I noticed that your spends are in fact growing every year. So what are the development issues and challenges that you and your organization have chosen to address? And what was really the basis of that choice?
Right. So, yes, the CSR spend has been increasing thanks to the bank doing well, and we hope that it keeps increasing 18% year on year. But coming back to the CSR piece, right? We largely work on 5 areas. We work on education, skilling, rural development, financial literacy, inclusion, and health and hygiene. Now, one could say that these 5 areas pretty much take care of, an entire gamut of activities under that, right? And intentionally so. Because while one does not want to be, all over the place in terms of its focus, it's extremely it's essential to put some sort of a structure into what we are doing, while at the same time we do understand that developmental issues are extremely complex, right? And it's not very easy to put them into buckets. If I say today that I'm working in education, it's not possible for me to go into the community and specifically in rural areas and say, I'm not going to look at other developmental needs of that community, right? So, so that's why we essentially picked up these 5 elements, which more or less to our mind come together beautifully to actually create a very good economic and social development in communities in which we operate. And so that's how we've started. Of course, initially the focus was more on education till we actually found our feet into the rural areas, because we weren't really working in rural earlier. And today, as I look back, I think 90% of our investments or CSR investments are in rural areas. So that's the mix really that we have, and that was the intent in taking up these 5 pillars, so to say, of CSR for us.
So that's very interesting. How did you actually? What was the motivation of actually going rural? I mean, it's very encouraging, but how did you actually decide to go rural?
So it really dovetails into the overall bank's plan, right? Because we do believe that while CSR, of course, the intent is to bring about change in the communities that we operate in traditionally. One can't shy away from the fact that you have to look at it very strategically and align it to the overall bank's growth, right? And traditionally, we have seen that over the last couple of years, the bank's forays into rural markets has been very, very high. We've got a lot of rural branches that have been opened up. We're working in agriculture. We've got one of the largest, microcredit program running with self-help groups. So given these expansions in rural areas, it only made much more sense for us to look at rural areas. Other than the fact, and the complementing fact to this, that we did realize that there is a need in rural areas, right? Because NGOs, organizations working in rural areas do not very often have access to finance. A lot of the times companies wish to undertake projects which are very close to their corporate offices, rightly so, because, you want that visibility, you want the ease of monitoring, etc. For us, we didn't have that restriction because we had branches in different places, right? We still do have some restrictions in terms of, we need to have a branch within a particular, how do you say, within I think it's about 20 kilometers or 25 kilometers, but largely have a comfort in operating in pretty much any area pan-India.
That's great. So you mentioned some of the NGOs. I noticed that you actually had partnerships with more than 65 NGOs across your CSR projects, if I have that right.
Right. The more than 68, I think now that's pretty much gone up to about more than, I think, close to 80 partners that we're working with, right?
Wow.
So you can just imagine if it's 80 partners, it has to be a mix of the large ones as well as the small ones. And that really multiplies the challenges.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
So I know I was just trying to check with you, what value do you find NGOs bringing in terms of designing and execution of your project interventions, and uh, any experiences that you would want to share? What has been your overall experience working with NGOs?
Sure. So if you ask me, what do the partners bring to the table? I think other than the structure, the CSR structure and the direction that we create, any success that we've had in any of our programs is pretty much, the doing of our partners, right? Because they are the ones that are executing. We are not the subject matter experts here. We draw on their support. So it's the partnership that's important for us. And I think each partner is very unique in its own approach. While not taking away that uniqueness, we try to bring some sort of a order in terms of what it is that we expect on field, right? So let me look at it this way. Let me put it rather this way. We've moved away from the traditional philanthropy, right? We don't believe in supporting, or we no, I won't say we don't believe it, but we don't typically look at supporting ongoing programs of partners. We rather have a program and we call upon partners to implement that particular project and find solutions and come up with innovative solutions or innovative ways in addressing the issue. So that's typically the framework in which we operate in. And I think we've had a wonderful experience in that each partner has really brought to the table its own areas of expertise really. So you could have you could have an organization that's working excellently in education, but when they're working in a rural area, there is a need to work on another issue, and that's when we've very often seen a lot of synergies, a lot of partnerships emerge even within our partners, where
Right.
they've drawn on each other's support and expertise, and that's the type of environment that really I would love to see evolving further.
So that's one aspect. The other thing that I notice is, and what people say is that government is actually supposed to be the largest development agency in the country. So besides working with your NGO partners, do you also look to collaborate with government agencies and programs in your development efforts? And again, what has been your role or experience in doing so?
Absolutely, we do. I don't think I think there's no escaping that, right? When you've got to make meaningful impact at the grassroots, collaboration with government and with bureaucracy I wouldn't say it's essential. I think it's a given, right? I think what's important is at what point this partnership comes into play, right? So for different programs, one is looking at it in different ways. Where we are looking at pan-India initiatives, we probably work with some of the government agencies to actually plan these out. But where it is very focused to a particular area, to a particular district, we'd much rather do the planning with the NGO partner and then use the government more in terms of understanding, in terms of leveraging the existing schemes, so that there is more of a synergy and there is a multiplier effect with our funds and the government funds coming in. So there's no duplication. So that's how we've typically looked at it. And of course, given that in the bank we do have a large team that's working with the government, obviously from a banking, from a business perspective, nevertheless that access is there, right? So that dialogue is always on. Otherwise, one would think that because ours is not a foundation and we're working typically from the bank, we could very well leave the coordination to a partner NGO or a partner organization, but that really doesn't happen. So it's a mix of both, I would say.
Okay. And the third aspect I wanted to chat about is there is a growing trend of collaborative philanthropy happening, and donors actually looking to co-fund projects and initiatives. What are your views on that? Are there benefits on that? Are there challenges facing on the co-funding approach?
So I'll tell you, there's no right or wrong about this, right? I think anybody you ask in the sector will agree and welcome, collaboration. But I think collaboration depends on the amount of risk you are willing to take, right? with the amount of, and I'm talking purely from the point of view of corporate CSR, right? I'm not talking about other partnerships. I'm talking about corporate CSR,
Right.
given the restrictions that one has currently
Right.
on the compliances, rather that one has. One would prefer to keep things within their control.
Okay.
Right? I know it's restrictive.
Mhm.
I know in an ideal way, one would want partners to execute with some amount of flexibility.
Mhm.
One should, in an ideal way, be willing to take risks, be okay to failure. But that's not how a lot of people look at, right? Because you are required to show impact. You are required to report on certain parameters. Given that, these are the difficulties and the questions that come in the way for partnerships. So, to go back to your question, partnerships, co-funding of projects is welcome, provided you are very clear on roles and responsibilities, and that can be addressed. If that comfort is achieved, then it's a fantastic way ahead. For me personally, I found this equation extremely difficult.
Okay.
But I think that that's something that one would have to work on in the years to come.
Right. The other thing that I want to check with you, and you mentioned that some of your development programs are also linked to, in some way, to your business vision and programs. But tell me, specifically looking at CSR, do you think that actually in a crowded marketplace in today's context where there is very little, there tends to be decreasing difference between brands and corporations, do you think CSR could actually create a differential for the brand in the minds of its stakeholders, customers, and society at large?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because let's look at it this way. Don't Let's not restrict ourselves merely to CSR, okay? Or rather, let's look at CSR as a more global term. You're talking about corporate citizenship. Here, I'm not just talking about my work in the community, which is an aspect, nevertheless, which people are engaged and wanting to know more about. It's also about the other aspect. It's about how you do your business, right? How responsibly you do your business. So, what sort of resources that you engage with, what is your diversity, what are your people practices, and of course, how do you engage in society? And all these things are extremely, extremely important. In the last 2 years, you would have seen multiple organizations, agencies that have actually come up, which are providing ratings to companies based on their ESG parameters, right? And these are very actively looked at by the community, both global as well as local. So I think that these are definitely an important differentiator between companies. So your responsibility to your own employees, to society, to the environment. I think these are the game changers.
Any thoughts you want to share with some of the professionals who are seeking to be part of the development sector? There are people who are coming fresh as professionals, or there are also people who are looking at mid-career switches. Any thoughts you want to share with them while coming to the development sector?
So I in fact, this is something that one has really seen a lot of people coming into. You've spoken about a switch in careers. You've seen so many people making that move, whether it's a movement from the corporate to the grassroots, people having trained an alternate profession, moving to social work, and I think that's definitely a welcome change. Because somehow I feel that the sector does require that amount of expertise. You need people from the corporate setup to come in, because as the social sector is one that is driven with a lot of passion, with a lot of feeling, right? Systems and processes is something that some of the larger ones definitely have, and a lot of others are working towards. But it's an area that we can work on. So creating that strategy, creating those systems and processes, I think is something that needs to be developed for young professionals. I think it's an area that's growing, extremely satisfying and rewarding personally. and which has a huge wealth of opportunity. I just if I look back to the years when we stepped in professionally, this was not the profession of choice, right? One was told that if you're looking at just doing good, you be there. Otherwise, you seek for another job. But that's not the case now. You can do both. You can do good and you can make a career.
Right.
So I think it's the best place to be in.
Right.
So one must follow their heart. If it lies in bringing societal change, then that's what you must do.
So thanks, Nusrat. It was really good talking with you. And we are hoping, in fact, with the recent merger coming up of HDFC Bank and HDFC Limited, I think your contribution and work in the development sector will only grow. So thanks very much for all that you're doing as a bank for the society. And thank you very much for sharing your thoughts today. It was really nice to talk to you.
Thank you. My pleasure completely.